what I think is very clear to me is talent management needs to be more agile. Like fundamentally, that is the challenge, right? Like no longer can you say, I hire a person for a role, they do the work for, it just doesn't work anymore. And AI is making it easier for us to really measure skills and use those skills in real time to reallocate people towards work. And I think that's the unlock. I think most organizations haven't figured that out yet. I think ServiceNow included. We're still trying to figure out exactly the way that works. But that's what AI is going to change from a talent management perspective. It's going to give us this opportunity to say, we're going to move people to whatever our priority is, and we're going to move them quickly so that we can get the work done we need to as an organization.
Brandon, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm sorry that we didn't get to cross paths in Vegas.
Next time.
Which for the audience sounds like weird, but just so you know, we were there for events. Right? Yeah. You had your...
It was work related, okay? Work related.
Yeah, I was at Unleashed and you were at your knowledge conference, which was, you literally took over the whole of Vegas.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. The goal is everyone that we've got to take over Vegas as well. But how are you? Because I know it was quite a few days and there's a lot to take in, I'm sure, along the way.
I'm good. I had a week to recover now, so I'm back on it, ready to have a good conversation.
Amazing. Before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit about your background and your journey to the role you're in right now.
Yeah. So currently I'm the group vice president of people analytics and AI, and I've spent the last 20 years or so in the people analytics, data science space. And, I kind of think about my career in sort of three parts. I first started at Qualcomm in the early 2000s. And, that was when people analytics was just coming on the scene. It was like people analytics teams were rare back then. And got the opportunity to Qualcomm was about 12,000 employees when I started to build their people analytics team. So was the first person on that team, centralized a bunch of resource analysts we had, and built an analytics function. I was there for 8 years, learned a lot. My background's in organizational psychology, so I knew nothing about data engineering and automation and everything you need to know to be able to support an organization of that scale. So that was a great experience. And then, in about 2010, I got the opportunity to go work at Pinterest when it was a few hundred employees, still a startup. And that was like such a different experience. I was still there to build the people analytics team, but coming into a company of that size where you didn't even have an HRIS fully implemented at the time, and really building from the ground up, from start to finish. Just an incredible company, incredible culture, incredible time to be there. And then, about 6 years ago, I got the opportunity. Actually, we were just talking about Pat Waters. Pat Waters recruited me over to ServiceNow. Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, she was the CHRO at the time. And so said, hey, do you want to come build the analytics team at ServiceNow? And so been there ever since, watched the team grow over the last 6 years, watched the organization grow. Been fun to be at a company that's so central to this AI transformation that's happening, and to be able to build AI for the HR function today.
Wow. What a journey. You were there from all the way from the inception, right? I think back then it was probably HR analytics. Not people analytics.
So I remember at Qualcomm reading what Google was, because Google was just starting to build their people analytics function. I was like, we got to do this. This is the future.
Yeah. So, and we had a little people analytics network that we built back then as well, where it was so new that people like Dawn Klinghoffer over at Microsoft and others who came from within the business to this brand new role that was created. So we were bringing everyone together, and it was like, that must be really something exciting for you to be at the beginning of something which now is one of the most important functions within an organization.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're getting a lot of questions with because now you've got AI
Yeah.
in the
Right.
role as well.
And there's been such a like so many different stages, right? Like in the beginning, it was all just about dashboards and just trying to get,
Yeah,
automated metrics to somebody without having to manually use Excel for everything. And then we've sort of figured that out. And this new challenge with predictive and AI and how you actually help the organization make decisions. It's been fun to see the different stages, and I'm sure there's going to be more in the next
yeah.
few years.
We can only imagine with agents and the advances of Gen AI, it's just going to get even more fun along the
Yeah,
way. How does it
fun is a
feel?
good way to describe it.
Yeah,
I like describing it as fun.
you got to. You have to either smile or you might cry. So you're gonna just got to choose one. How does it feel to be in an organization leading the people analytics and AI function in a company just also delivering this to its customers? That must be really fun. And what type of relationship do you have with the product team? It must be super
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's one of the things I'm really thankful for in my role is you get this, you sort of have two parts to your role. In one way, you are very much a part of the product and working really closely with the product organization and our internal teams that are implementing the technology to say, what would we want to build, right? What could we build with AI that will really help the HR organization? And that is just an incredible. It's a very different challenge. One of the things I've learned along the way is, building something internally is hard. Building something for thousands of different companies and customers
Yeah.
is impossible. Like it is so much harder than what we have to do focusing internally. And I love that. I think that's the fun part. What are the kind of core challenges that every HR organization across all these different industries are facing? And where can we really differentiate from the competitive landscape and create AI that really helps deliver value for the organization? So that's definitely a huge part of it. And then I think the other great part about working at a company like that is just the level of engagement internally. Like there's no convincing anybody that this is the future or that this
Yeah.
is important. That we skip that step. Like everybody's bought in, and it's about how do we really get to value quickly, which
Yeah.
I love.
And that's why I was so excited about this conversation, because you're building this playbook internally of how to become an AI first organization yourselves, and then you're then also delivering that for your customers
Yeah.
on the other side. So you're living and breathing, practicing what you preach, as it were. But that's constantly evolving with the rapid technology advancements that we see. I'd love for you to share ServiceNow's 4-point plan for becoming a AI first organizations. The fact that you have a 4-point plan is already impressive enough.
But could be total BS. So don't reserve judgment. But no, we've been working at this for 3 years, and when ChatGPT exploded, everybody was sort of like, "Oh, this is new. We've got to figure it out." But my experience at that time was everybody was like, "What? What are we doing? Like, where? Like, which way are we going? And what do we need to be doing specifically within HR?" Was a question that I was talking to customers a lot about, and we were thinking about internally. Like, what is our role as an HR function in this transformation? And so what we tried to do with the 4-point plan was really think through the different roles that HR needs to play in driving this transformation, both within their function, right, to make us an AI first, AI powered HR organization, but also all the things that we need to support as this AI transformation happens across the enterprise. And I think that's one thing I always remind people about is that we sort of have two roles in everything that's happening with AI. We've got to make this HR function AI first, and then we also need to support the enterprise in the transformation. So the 4-point plan was our way to say these are the 4 things that we need to focus on and really get accomplished to make the organization successful. And so the first one, I'll walk through all of them, but the first one we call implement an AI operating model. And I really encourage organizations that haven't done this yet to pause whatever you're doing and go back to this step if you haven't yet. The concept is there are AI ideas that exist everywhere in your organization, and you see it, right? Everybody's raising their hand with an idea about how AI is going to make them more effective, and the use cases and different ideas that will help their team or their organization. how does that idea go from a concept to reality in your organization? And when I ask customers that a lot, or when I talk to customers who are on this journey, usually there's not a clear answer to that question. And I think that's really important is, okay, an employee in your talent acquisition says, hey, I've got this idea. I think we can use AI to do XYZ tasks. What happens next? And for us, that meant the idea goes into a workflow, and our technology teams quickly assess that idea for effort and value. So we try to get any idea that's submitted. We've had over 500 ideas submitted to our organization. We assess it on effort and by value as quickly as we can, usually within 2 days. So just high level, is it valuable? Is it worth investing the time and effort? Then what happens is there are tons of other stakeholders if you feel like it is valuable. So if it gets past that gate, right? Legal, IT, data security, data privacy, all these different stakeholders have to be involved in the process. How does that work? Right? Do you have a consistent way that that should work in your organization? What's your governance process? How does that all work so that the idea goes really quickly from idea to reality? And so we've spent a lot of time in the beginning spelling that out, and we call it like our AI factory, right? Basically idea to actual delivery. And I think what my goal has always been that any employee in HR, if they have an AI idea, they know how that process works. They know what they would need to do, where they should start, and how to ultimately, get it to value.
I love that. What is the? I know you've got many more things to share, but I've got a few questions before I forget. What is the process of submitting that?
So
like tactically, like how does that work?
Yeah, there's this workflow company that I know about called ServiceNow that builds workflows. So that's what it is. So we built it all on ServiceNow.
Of course you did.
Right? So an employee submits an idea, right? Like it goes through, and they can actually. What's amazing about it? Idea gets submitted. All the right people are notified. There's approvals, right? There's all these things are built into the workflow so that it's a nicely spelled out process. And that's generally how it works.
And do you mentioned the different people that review it? Do you have like a AI ethics council that reviews it together, or is it like individual? Because you want to obviously make sure there's not a bottleneck somewhere in that.
And that's why that first gate, I think that's really what I find is like people go directly to the governance and ethics, and then it kind of can slow things down.
It doesn't even get to that part. Yeah. Yeah.
Effort value first. Right? Is it going to be valuable, period, right? And then get to the parts where you really have to work through sometimes and figure out exactly how, So I think that part of it is really, really important. Now, we do have a governance structure. So we have an enterprise AI governance committee, which is cross-functional, thinks about everything related to AI for ServiceNow, including our product. And then we have an HR AI governance committee, and that's specifically, employment law, data privacy, all the stakeholders that I talked about previously. And so once the idea gets past that initial gate, it goes to that committee just to flag, hey, is this high risk? Do we need to go deeper, or can we just advance it and start executing?
Love that. What are some of the other points on the?
Yeah. So the second one is the one that I hear a lot of people talking about, which is build the tech and data infrastructure, like building the foundation that's going to ultimately allow you to be an AI first organization. So there's a lot in here. I think, a couple things I'll call out just quickly. First is really having a strategy about your technology and where you want your AI experiences to be built and live and interact with your employees. I find a lot of organizations are using point solutions or creating agents in specific areas. I think that's not going to be the way of the future. We need to figure out a way to bring these experiences together, creating a single experience platform that really helps you. You don't have to remember where the agent lives. The stat we always cite at ServiceNow, the average company has 80 different employee-facing systems. So the employee has to remember all that. And if there's AI in every single one of those, they have to remember that. So how do you create whatever your strategy is, wherever you think employees should be going to interact with your AI, what is that? And really putting that down on paper is key to me. And then the second piece is really the data. Data is ultimately the driver of whether AI is going to be successful. So centralizing your data, bringing data together from different systems, thinking critically about what data is really going to be needed to drive whichever use case you're going after. And then quality, really having an approach to data quality and investing in that space. So the example I always give is, we built this AI, what we call AI search. And what it does is it takes all our policy documents, it indexes them. An employee can go on and search, what are my benefits? And instead of having to sift through the 200-page policy document, it says, oh, we know that person is in this country at this level. Here's the answer. It's very similar to the experience you get on ChatGPT or Google externally, but we built it internally for all our policy documents. But what happened was we discovered that our policy documents were not high quality enough, and people were getting the wrong answer. So we built a way to really assess that and measure the quality of those policy documents, keep them updated, measure and ensure that they're not getting out of date. And so those are the types of things that I think organizations need to start really thinking critically about. What data is going into your model, and how do you, really assess the quality and make sure you're staying on top of it.
Yeah. I love the part about the experience, though, that you also mentioned. Correct me if I'm wrong. Lloyd's is a customer.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was interviewing their head of AI and people analytics technology in studio a few months back, and we were talking about agents, right? And everyone's fighting to be the master agent, as it were. And he said to me, Chris, I could turn on 5 agents tomorrow, from all of our different tech stack, right? They all have an agent, but we chose ServiceNow as the main agent. And I was like, why? Why is that? And kind of like what you said, he was like, it connects and plays nicely with all of the other tools and platforms, and is creating a consistent experience for their employees to connect that and bring that all together. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And I'm hearing that a lot with many companies now that are turning to ServiceNow. This is not sponsored by ServiceNow, by the way, everyone listening right now. But so you clearly, there's something you and the team are doing really well to ensure that you have that consistent employee experience or customer experience, so that everything's feeding into one agent within the AI.
And I think, one of the things that we do, which I think does really help, again, thinking about the employee as the user of these AI use cases, we are not function specific. So ServiceNow doesn't.
Yes, exactly.
The agent is IT or finance or, doesn't matter. We create that seamless, that consistent experience, and the employee goes there and says, okay, I got a question. I don't even know if it's HR or finance.
That's what I mean. 100%.
Yeah. That's exactly. I totally agree.
Where there's already companies right now where you've got, I know friends of mine that are very large organizations. They've got 4 different agents, or chat interfaces that they have to talk to go here to get this material, to go there, and it's just a bit of a nightmare.
Just the thinking that has to happen to know which one answers your question is we're trying to solve for that. Yeah,
it kind of defies the point of having the technology in the first place. And the other point you mentioned, many of the companies I speak to, that when they talk about ServiceNow, one of the first things that they talk about is the fact that they love that they can find, their employees and their company can find access to the resources and their materials straight away, and the ability, like you described earlier, to help update that. Because before now, it was just a disaster. You had this information sitting in silos across the organization in random intranets somewhere. It was just a bit of a mess as well. So that's such a, it sounds it sounds trivial, but it's actually a use case that comes up all the time in my conversations as the thing they appreciate the most.
And it's such an interesting experience being at the company, because it is literally, because everything we do goes into ServiceNow. It's one place for everything. You just start, you ask the question, think about all the complexity that solves for. So it's
a lot less tickets for the HR team.
Yes, deflection, right? And we've seen that with a lot of the AI solutions. We're seeing a real reduction in tickets and the amount of work our ops organization has to do.
A lot of unlocked hours. I'm interested to see how we utilize those unlocked hours. I think that's going to be an interesting part.
Yeah.
Um,
Like,
Go for it.
yeah. That's to me, that's what we one of the things that the HR organization really needs to lean into is we're starting to create this capacity. It's starting to get real. How do you reallocate that to something important and strategically important for your business? I think is that's something we should do. That's workforce planning. That's, things we should be thinking about as an HR organization.
Yeah. Where are we at? We're at point three.
Oh yeah. Point three. Okay, sorry.
I love this back and forth. This is great. I love it.
Good.
I love it. I feel like we're doing your TED talk right now. It's like the master. This is great.
Not as smooth as a TED
No,
Talk,
but this is like
but,
it's a good rehearsal. We can use AI to narrow it down.
That's perfect. Yeah, that sounds good. So the third pillar is enablement, which is just reskilling, upskilling, everything we need to do around the technology to be successful. There's a lot we can talk about here, but one of the things that we did internally, which I think is really valuable, is deciding on what do you want to build? What skills do you want to build within your organization? And so we've kind of landed on this like three pillars, which is the first one that we call no AI. And every employee in our organization has to have this foundational understanding of AI, responsible AI, what it can do, what it can't do, what tools are available. That's something that every single employee needs to understand. The second pillar is what we call use AI, which is if you launch a technology meant for a specific role or function and you do not provide training, I will guarantee you it's not going to get adopted. And we've seen this with AI solutions. So we were talking about ops and shared service agents. We launched this functionality that, okay, let's say someone submits, they want to change their benefits. They work with an agent back and forth. They're trying to get all the information. Then that agent goes out on vacation. New person takes it over, right? In the past, they had to read through every single communication that's ever happened before that case got to them. What the AI does is it summarizes all of it and gives them a nice little, hey, here's what's been done, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, here's everything you need to know. Great functionality. We're finding it's making people more productive, but we launched it and no one used it. And the reason no one used it is because they didn't understand what was going into the model and they didn't trust it. So they were like, okay, can I actually rely on this summary, or do I still need to read through all the documents, all the emails that happened before? Simple idea, 5 to 10 minute video that just explained, hey, this is the data that goes, this is how you should use it. It's really obvious, but if you ask people if they've done it, I find most organizations are not, really consistently developing that training around the use cases that they're launching. So that's been really, really key for us. And then the third one is what we call build AI. So all the technical skills. And we really believe, yes, engineers and IT needs to build the technical skills. But I think where this is going is very much that everybody needs to build technical skills to manage agents, to use agents in their day-to-day work. So how do we build that, what we call citizen development, so that it's not just engineers that are building AI use cases, but that every employee across our organization can build AI into their workflow or what they're doing.
I love that. And you can assume that people know how to use these tools. I think I've made that mistake before. We built our own AI agent Atlas, which we fed with all of the 10,000 hours plus of our content. And we're training it constantly, and we handed it out to all of our community and users to access our podcasts, our recordings from the events, and just assumed that they would know how to get all of the value from it, and we were mistaken. So I had to create a series of videos, just like very basic stuff, like of how to use it, and people were like, oh, I didn't realize I could do that. I'm like, oh, like because I play around with the tools every single day, and I'm sure you're the same, we just assume everyone does and has that level of competency as well. How does content show up in the in the agent? Like if you have a video, does it like link to an external video, or have you been able to make sure that shows up in the flow in the same user experience? Because that's something we've just integrated video, audio, and documents into the interface of the AI, so you don't have to go somewhere else, because that seems to be a challenge for companies. They'll have it, and then okay, you got to go over here to our LMS. Or here to our, does that make sense?
No, totally. It actually very much ties back to that like data infrastructure topic. Where do the videos actually live? Because if they don't live on where you're building the AI platform, or you can't pull them in, right? You're not going to be able to show them in that experience. So what, I think we have both actually. In some cases, we're linking out. In some cases, the video is embedded in the experience.
Nice.
And I think goal, right? Long-term goal is that you don't have to go anywhere. It's all in one experience again, but it's a little bit of both right now.
Yeah. That we've now removed Arn's just within the experience now. So
Nice.
we to the point where you can even ask the agent a question, it will take you to the exact second in the video that answers your question, or the exact second in the document that answers that, and you can actually talk to the video in the agent and have a conversation with that,
That's awesome.
or even turn the document into a video and the video into a podcast, so you can kind of play around with how you want it without taking people externally. And I think the other request, and I'm sure, and I know you guys already do this, is like it needs to show up in the flow of work as well through the other communication tools. So making sure that it can be accessible via things like Teams and Slack, and because I think I saw something the other day that the average employee has like 15 apps. Which is kind of crazy.
That's actually seems low to me, but like, it does feel like that. And I think that integration and again, meeting people wherever they're at is key to adoption and to actually getting value.
Yeah. What's the fourth pillar?
Okay. Last thing, and this one is, one of my passion points is AI. We really believe, and we've seen in a couple of areas, a huge ROI for the investment. But there is an investment upfront. And I think investment doesn't just mean technology. It means talent. It means getting people into HR who really understand this AI transformation, having a leader within your function who's responsible for building all the things that we've been talking about today, I think is really, really key. Building that investment, building that business case, and then really thinking about what are the outcomes of what we're investing in and how do we actually show that this is returning value to the organization. I think, one of the things I see a lot in talking to people who are implementing use cases, they'll say, oh, every time you use this feature, you save 5 minutes. And that's great. That's wonderful. What happens with that 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Because if it just goes into the ether and someone's whatever they're doing with those 5 minutes, and it's not tied back to some sort of plan about how to reallocate that capacity. Hey, we're going to take on this additional work. We're going to move people who had previously done this work to new roles so that they can, upskill and do things that are more strategic or valuable for the organization. Those are the types of conversations that I think we really need to be focused on, especially as, in my mind, these capacity gains last year were like on the fringe, on the edges. It wasn't huge. I think some of the use cases that we're starting to see this year and into next year will create more and more capacity. And we need to think within HR, how do we manage that? How do we make sure we have the right workforce to support the work that we actually want to get done?
Do you think that most companies right now have the skills and capabilities within their existing HR team to do this?
So I think there's a scale to that, I think. So we've built this like internal, what we call the AI control tower. It monitors all of our use cases. It says exactly how much people are using. We have assumptions about how much capacity that is. We're real-time monitoring this stuff and seeing the value, and then trying to take that back to our workforce planning council and say, hey, we're really creating capacity in this organization. Let's think about what that means. How do we upskill or move the talent to new roles so that they can deliver more value for the organization? But I do think there's like a simpler version, like that everybody can be doing. Like that's great to measure everything and use all this data. And fundamentally, it's if you're implementing a use case, do we think this is going to really affect how many people we need to do the work today? And just having a conversation. I mean, it's not as scientific maybe, but I think even just having the conversation and thinking about that as you're implementing use cases is something that every HR organization, could be doing.
One of the common things I hear, both in my private conversations and even during some of our shows, is that when HR leaders are bringing in different AI solutions, it just gets to the IT team and just gets stuck.
Yeah.
and it doesn't go anywhere. And someone described it recently. They're just piling up on the desk of the IT team. What advice would you give to HR leaders listening of how to? You've already shared great advice already with the model and like what you shared in the beginning. So there's a lot there. But if you could
Yeah.
kind of summarize that, like what would be your main advice you would give to them to ensure that this becomes more of a, I suppose, a partnership
Yeah.
as opposed to sitting with IT, they'll get back to us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that partnership is key. And I think um, we within HR have to educate ourselves on the challenges that IT faces. So all those things I talked about, if you talk to most HR leaders and talk about data architecture and integrations and where data is flowing, you know, that is not usually a topic we spend a lot of time talking about, but we need to, because these are the things that the reason that that's happening, right? Where you have this great idea and it doesn't end up working out when you actually go to implementation or execution is because of challenge. It's not because they're not smart it's because of some of these challenges we talked through. Not the right skills in the organization, not the right data in the right place. You haven't thought about that technology, experience layer, and that creates a lot of challenges. So I think um, building the partnership, listening to the challenges, and then I also again think building the expertise within HR so that you can combine your knowledge of the use case with the technical knowledge needed to actually execute it. I think the problem is that too often we have this idea, it's a great idea. We don't understand all these technical challenges that they have to face to actually execute it. And so I think building that expertise, I talked about the concept of investing in talent. I think that's another way, right? Build the talent within your team, someone who can really partner and interface with that IT organization and, hold them accountable, but also like listen when they're facing challenges and
Yeah.
change the way you're operating.
Yeah. You were at our last AI HR summit in December, and one of the things that I saw immediately that companies that are really thriving in this place is they have a really strong relationship with their CIO, their CTO.
Yeah.
Throughout that event, we had many, Kyndryl did a session with their CIO, CTO, and many others, and like that relationship is so important. But in the past, that traditionally wasn't really as important. But right now, those are really succeeding, having really candid conversations, have really strong partnerships with their CIO and CTO.
Yeah. And our work is getting so similar. HR's organization is moving more towards IT, and I think IT's work is sort of moving more towards HR. And we're fundamentally if I think about ServiceNow, a lot of what we do within HR is implement technology to support employees' journey, to support the employee experience. A lot of what we're doing is around technology. Yes, there are programs, yes, there are other things, but we need to build that expertise within HR to support the technology we need. And
yeah. One of the things interesting to ask you about in the age of AI, and we had a panel this Wednesday with 1,000 CHROs talking about this exact topic, and 6 panelists talking about it. In the age of AI, what does this mean for talent management or the future of talent management? Because it's massively disrupting this space.
Yeah, I think a couple things I would say. Well, first tell me what you think of it as like talent management. Because I think there's like different variations.
There's loads. Where do I even start? Like we spent time talking about building a skills-based organization, and we were talking about talent marketplaces and how AI's that was a lot of it. How AI is impacting that in so many different ways. Whether it's job matching, whether it's gigs, whether it's mentorship, whether it's like connecting that to their talent intelligence. We went down a whole rabbit hole. We could do a whole series on that topic.
Yeah, for sure. Let's have another 45 minutes to talk about that question. But what I will say is, what I think is very clear to me is talent management needs to be more agile. Like fundamentally, that is the challenge, right? Like we no longer can you say, I hire a person for a role, they do the work for, it just doesn't work anymore. And AI is making it easier for us to really measure skills and use those skills in real time to reallocate people towards work. And I think that's the unlock. If I think most organizations haven't figured that out yet. I think ServiceNow included. We're still trying to figure out exactly the way that works. But that's what AI is going to change from a talent management perspective. It's going to give us this opportunity to say, we're going to move people to whatever our priority is, and we're going to move them quickly so that we can get the work done we need to as an organization. And there's
Yeah.
lots of challenges with that. People challenges. Do people want to move that much? But I think to me, that's the real.
Yeah, that was the whole, and I'm 100% with you, and that was why we did that session, because it was something that our community kept saying, guys, can you please do a session on session on this for the group? And one of the big parts we spent time on is the whole culture shift of that. Like, you're asking managers now to be exporters of talent rather than hoarders, right? And to your point, people are so used to having, okay, this is where I am and this is the journey up to and through the ranks, right? As opposed to, okay, I'm going to go work on a gig over here for a few weeks and then maybe I'll be over there. And you're no longer, your role is no longer defined by a title, but by a set of skills that can then be applied across the business. And that just changes everything. Your processes, the way you're rewarded, it's a complete, it's less of a technology challenge right now. It's more of a transformation and cultural challenge. And that was kind of what we discussed. Many of the companies on the call yesterday were quite advanced on that journey, using tools that are out there or talent marketplace platforms already, and are seeing incredible value. Whether it's unlocked hours, whether it's retention, whether it's upskilling their workforce now, so they're hiring way more internally versus externally, which is obviously saving them a fortune. But there was one company on the call that through their talent marketplace had saved 100 million last year.
Wow!
Right, just through not recruiting externally and capitalizing on their internal skills, which was just like wow.
And that's the skill of the future. I think is like you were talking about, like we need leaders and we need everybody who has this ability to accept that the change is going to be constant. It's already constant, but it's like to accelerate. And so I think that's if I look forward to what we need out of our leaders in the future, that to me, that ability to embrace and accept change is really, really key.
Yeah. What's the main way that AI has changed the role of the people analytics leader and the work that you and the team do?
Yeah. So I think I'll say three things. So one is the interface is changing. No dashboards are going to go away, or they're going to be in the background or whatever. But the most consistent way that people are going to interact with data in people analytics is through agents. I think that's hard stop. We need to think about that. We need to think about what that means. We need to think about how we help that accelerate. But that's one piece. Fundamentally, I think basic reporting is, roles, basic data analysis roles will also not be where we invest our resources. That's been happening for a long time. But I think most organizations still have a few like that are still doing work like that. I think that goes away. And then I think it accelerates our ability to focus on really meaningful questions and deeper, data science type questions. Well, it's been a journey we've been on for 20 years, right? Moving from just, hey, can I just report the
from Excel
rate?
Spreadsheets?
Yeah. Well, we talked about it in the beginning, right? Like that journey is this is just the hockey stick of that journey, and it's something we've been talking about for a long time. I just think it's really here now, and we need to think about what that means. I think a really interesting question is, what does the future org structure of people analytics teams look like, and what are the actual talent and resources you need to support that function?
Yeah. A question that comes up a lot is should people analytics even sit within HR?
Yeah. It's and there's like, so ServiceNow has a federated model. So we have a central analytics team that maintains our enterprise data platform, right? Bringing data from everywhere, so it's all in one place, like I talked about. And then we have the experts today who sit within HR and have an understanding of the programs and everything that you need to know on that side. I do think it's I think there's going to be a lot more centralization, to be honest. If you think about everything we just talked about with,
Yeah.
single experiences, I think it's not just analytics. I think it's a lot of roles that will be more centralized in the future than they are today.
Yeah. No, I agree, because it's touching every single part of the business.
Yeah.
And every single customer and every single process. Do you think this is one of the biggest moments of transformations? We talk about like the age of the internet, right? and
Yeah.
the industrial revolution. Do you think this is as big as that, or even bigger?
Yeah. I tend to be on the side of it's even bigger. I think we are in the early days where it's easy to say it's not delivering value, but it's very clear to me that there are some things we need to work through, and I tend to think there's like the foundational stuff is going to take a little bit longer than people are suggesting, but I think the transformation is as big as people are saying, if not bigger. But I do think all the things we just talked about on that 4-point plan are going to take time,
Yeah.
and for organizations to get there. And then we're going to see this huge transformation of the business.
I agree. Like, the technology is evolving quicker than we can adapt in every way, right? Like what we're doing now, only a few years ago, people were like saying, yeah, it's going to take 5-10 years. Like, no, it's right now. It's here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep. And like, there's some really foundational, like we could spend another 45 minutes talking about, data security and who has access to data and how that works in the future. Because to me, that's really the interesting question about unlocking HR productivity is we're going to need to be comfortable with data going to more places, to more people.
Yeah, we'll save that for part 2. Listen, we could talk forever. What we covered a lot there, but for people that perhaps maybe earlier on their journey, what would be your parting piece of advice, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I think just one thing I really encourage organizations to do is to go through those 4 pillars and say where you're at. Just say, hey, we haven't even started this. We're, whatever, we're a C- in this, whatever it is. Just assess yourself and say, are there things we can be doing today in each of these pillars to at least move us in the right direction? I think that's a really tactical thing you can take away.
Yeah. So for those that are watching this in Atlas, ask Atlas to create an action plan from this podcast and write up an email that you can send to your team.
Love it.
to set up a meeting with those 4 pillars to have a conversation. It will take 10 seconds to do that, and you can action on this now. But and where can people learn more about ServiceNow if they want to connect with the team and learn more?
Yeah. So one thing is we just launched actually a knowledge. It's called ServiceNow University. It's free to everyone.
Oh, amazing.
It's literally, you can learn about general, if you don't have basic AI understanding, there's some general foundational learning. If you want to learn about ServiceNow technology specifically, they also have like certifications where you can become an expert in our technology. It's free, so go check it out.
Amazing. So wherever you're listening or watching right now, the links are going to be in the description. So make sure you go click there and check it out. It's free. Make sure you do that. If you haven't learned anything from this call, you definitely need to stay ahead of the change and upskill and reskill yourself. So make sure you do that. And also connect with Brand on LinkedIn. Probably a good place to follow you there. Appreciate you chatting, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks.